Well, hello. Today we have a lot of work to do on this thing right here. You know, it's funny. Being a 2014, I find myself working on this more than the Mustang in terms of mechanical repairs. But yeah, so we have a few things to do. So let's check that out real quick. So what could we be doing today? Well, last night I was taking the car out and got on it and hit boost, loud backfire, no power. And I was like, oh boy, that ain't good. Well, once I realized I didn't grenade the engine, I realized I had absolutely zero boost. So I knew right away that I blew a turbo hose. I'm like, great, which one is it? Thankfully, the easiest one to repair. So if you look here, yeah, that's supposed to be connected to that piece down there, and well, it's not. And also, I blew a line off here, and you may not know about what that is just yet, the little brass fitting, but at some point I'll make a video and get you up to speed on that. So needless to say, I have to fix that. And another thing, the real important reason why I need to come out here is I need to change the spark plugs. And another cool thing is I do have a really cool tool to show you, and it's what you should use every time you gap plugs for your car. So when it comes to gapping plugs, I normally use this type of gapping tool. So everyone knows what this is. You know, you just stick the spark plug in it and you just ride the side up until it gets snug, and then that's where your gap is. Well, normally I use this tool when I gap the plugs for the Mustang, mainly because I use copper plugs for that. I don't use anything special on that car. There's really no need to, at the moment at least. However, for the SHO, the plugs that I use, and well, practically every SHO enthusiast, they're iridium plugs, and iridium plugs, the tips of them are very, very fragile, in the sense that you don't want to really use a tool like this and, you know, scrape it all the way up until you get your gap, because that can just scrape the iridium tip down to nothing, and then, well, what good is it at that point? So the best tool you want to use is something like this. Now this is a pretty cool tool. This particular one is actually, I find this incredibly great value. So this was actually, I got this off eBay, and it was sold by a company out of Texas called Street Rays, and they actually machine these themselves out of a solid piece of billet aluminum. So it's a really cool piece. And there's a bunch of different ones on eBay. A lot of them are, of course, Chinese made, and while normally that doesn't bother me, what I was having a problem with is how the tools were actually constructed. I was really concerned about having a rigid construction, because when you thread the spark plug in, I didn't want anything messing the spark plug up or jamming it in there and not being able to get it out. These are expensive plugs. And I came across this tool for an extremely good price. And one thing what made me really pull the plug on this tool and purchase it was the fact that the screw you use to set the gap has an Allen head fitting. So for me, that was important, because you could take an Allen key, for example, not to say this is the right size, is it? Okay, well, that's kind of luck. But I could take a tool like this, stick it in there, and I can use leverage to feel, and I don't have to crank on the screw to get my gap. I can do it a lot easier that way. A lot of the other ones are like these big turn knobs, and you turn it by hand, and I didn't like that. This, I find a much better solution to that problem. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to quickly show you, even though you probably already know, but I'm going to do it anyway, how this tool actually works. So of course, to do this, first you'll need a spark plug to gap. Secondly, you need the tool to gap them. And thirdly, there's a third very important part of all this that you need, and that is a feeler gauge. Let me put that in frame a little bit better. There we go. The feeler gauge is what you're going to actually use to set the gap. What you do is pretty simple. Take your spark plug, thread it in until it seats all the way down. You don't have to crank on it, just hand tight, right? Just like that. And what you see there is that the ground strap is lined up with that screw. Awesome. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna take the feeler gauge and we're gonna slide it between the ground strap and the electrode. It's just gonna fit right there, just like that. And now, let's take our Allen wrench here, and we're just gonna go ahead and push that screw up onto the ground strap, and we're just gonna crank the screw until it pushes that ground strap snug, but not tight, snug against the feeler gauge. And now the feeler gauge just fits nice and snug, not super loose, not super tight, but where I can slide it in and not have to like easily wiggle it out. And that lets me know that the gap is set to where I need it to be. So needless to say, this tool is going to be very helpful. And the nice thing is, normally I would buy the spark plugs pre-gapped the way I want them from my tuner. However, with everything going on, they've not had the spark plugs in stock. And you do pay a little bit of a premium on top of what the spark plugs normally cost because they do it for you. The nice thing is you just get them and you pop them in. You don't have to take the time and gap them. And that's kind of the downside to this, is this method does take a lot longer to do. In the sense, you're getting a proper gap on your plugs. You're not going to worry about damaging your plugs. And in the long run, it will save you money. In fact, one-time use, this tool will pay for itself from what it would cost me to go to the tuner and order the plugs. So this is the best way to precisely gap your plugs for your car. And now that we've talked about this, I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna get all my plugs gapped, and then we're gonna go throw them in the car. So I got the plugs all gapped and we're ready to put them in. So I'm gonna go ahead, get these coils out, and we'll start popping them in. All right, last one. So a cool tip for when you're removing your spark plugs, if you don't have a socket that has the little rubber piece inside to retrieve the socket, just get yourself some fuel hose. This is 3/8 fuel hose. Just stick it down in there, and you can use it to turn it. Pulls it out without damaging the insulator. And this method can be used the same to put the spark plug back in. Now you ready? Tighten it up with the socket. Alright, so I got everything all buttoned up, ready to go. Let's give it a start and see how it sounds. So that's it for this video. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends and family, and if you like the content you're seeing, then please go ahead and subscribe to the channel and keep a lookout for the next video.